Well, thank you very much for coming. I'm going to talk about language and literacy basically in a way to merge the two. Because if you don't know any words, reading them doesn't help you, right? I am relatively fluent in reading Spanish, but I don't understand a word I'm reading. So it does me no good. Hi, come on in. Have some pizza. Oh, sorry. So, is this better? Okay. The whole purpose of this is to create understanding. The best way to do that is ask questions. So I'm not really here to show you my slides. I keep the slides mostly to keep me on track. And I'd like to start with showing you what's possible, because a lot of people, especially the specialists, do not believe that 4-year-olds can read. So this comes from a mom.
Hi, my name is Alex Chow, and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about the amazing progress my daughter Eloise has made with the Rocket Phonics program. 2020 was a year of complete unpredictability, I think, for everyone with the global pandemic. She was out of school just as much as she was in school. But in 2021, February, she ended up going back to school at St. Paul Preschool, where they had implemented the Rocket Phonics program beginning that same month. And her reading took off. And I mean, when she went in, she was basically just able to identify her letters and her letter sounds. And within just a few weeks of working the 15 minutes twice a week with Dr. Guffanti's volunteers, she was blending letter sounds and reading 3- and 4-letter words with ease. The change was absolutely incredible. We also had a newborn baby at the same time, so I was not doing anything with her at home. So I can wholeheartedly say that this change came from the Rocket Phonics program, as well as her wonderful teachers at St. Paul. And we're just so grateful for the Rocket Phonics program being part of her life and propelling her into kindergarten as one of the top students at Southside, where she's now reading at a 1st grade level, only halfway through the year of her kindergarten year.
Are you my mother? A mother bird sat on her egg. Okay. The egg jumped. Oh, oh, said the mother bird. My baby will be here. He will want to eat. I must get
Let's look at it. Take a look, see what you can try.
I always ask something.
Good.
Something for my baby bird to eat. She said, I will be back. So away she went.
And as she reads, she gets stuck on a big word, something. And the mom says, see what you can do. And by golly, Eloise actually figures it out and says something. And okay, sorry.
There you go.
So, any rate, that's what's possible. And a lot of people take the approach of making them memorize words. So when they get into kindergarten, they have all these high-frequency words that they've memorized. And the research shows that that doesn't actually work. Eventually they start confusing the with and think that it's all basically the same. Whatever little short word they memorize together, they're just interchangeable. Which means that the reading becomes nonsense to them. And they're reading not for their own enjoyment, but they're reading to basically make the teacher happy. So just born to about 1 year, your goal is to hear sounds and begin to learn language by saying your first word. So what do they do? What do they hear when they're listening to you talk with your other kids or with your husband or with a friend that comes over? They hear one giant long sound, like a paragraph is one word. Okay? Has a beginning, has an ending, lots of sound. Anybody here listen to somebody talk in a foreign language with another person and try and figure out where the words start and end? Yeah, so that's what they're hearing at the ripe old age of 10 months or so. Then they catch on that there is a word that has a beginning sound and an ending sound. And once they figure out the beginning and the ending sound, they come up with their very first word. My daughter's first word was pizza. And my wife and my mother-in-law had been saying mama, 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 mama to her for months. And she still said pizza anyway. My wife denies that. So, okay, so now they've got a clue. If they can figure out the beginning and the ending sound, they can say the word. And so the word to them sounds like one sound. And they're still adding words to their vocabulary. What's the value of having words in your vocabulary? Well, when you get to a point where you're reading and we're having them sound out, they'll sound it out and go, oh, I know that word. And that's no vocabulary. Nothing we do will help them read. You need to talk to them. And some of them, when they start talking, they don't seem to stop. But other ones are kind of quiet. At any rate. So what happens to get them to this point, to go from here to here, is you want to get them to hear the sounds within the words. So the difference between phonological awareness and phonemic awareness is simply one sound. The English language has, at a minimum, 36 sounds, and if you've got a really good ear, it has 51 sounds, and you can find those 51 in the dictionary. But 36 is good enough to get them to read. And I'm dyslexic, so I had a hard enough time with the 36 sounds. So, phonological awareness is like those rhyming words at the end of, so when you're singing nursery rhymes, you're basically training them to hear phonologues, the ending rhyme. And then eventually you can break the phonologues into phonemes. And that happens to 80% of the kids somewhere between the age of 3 and the age of 7. So great. If this is happening to 80%, why then do we have only 1 out of 3 kids reading at grade level? Well, the answer is really quite simple. If you go to pretty much any reading program used by any public school or private school, they use the 26-letter alphabet. And if you have a 26-letter alphabet and you're trying to have one symbol represent one sound, you are going to fail. So that's why we have that's why we use the play and read cards, which there are 36 of them. And even worse than the fact that we have 10 sounds that are extra from the Roman alphabet, which had 26 letters, is that English has 13 vowel sounds and only 5 vowel letters. So the odds that the child is going to guess the right one is like 0. Well, not really. It's 5 out of 13. If you have 2 vowels in the word, then it becomes, I don't know, it's about 5 out of, about 1 out of 13. And by 3 vowels, it's 1 in 20. So I love watching kids guess, but not when they guess wrong. Brittany, do we have a play and read card set? Okay, that'd be great. So, okay, so that's what we're doing. The teachers are trained to do onset and rhyme, and that is basically, onset is the first sound in the word, and rhyme is the phonological ending, like bat, cat, sat, fat. So that's just a review. With the baby, you want to be talking to your baby, and they'll start to play with the sounds. My daughter was highly auditory. I'm very low auditory, so she could out-talk me by age 2. But not only was she highly auditory, but she had a good ear. So you could hear her kind of pretend talk, with all the tonation. Does anybody have a child that does that? They're not saying actual words, but it sounds like they're asking questions. They're making statements. They've got the tonation. They just don't have the sounds in the right order to make a word. So they play with the sounds, and if you play with the sounds, they'll play more. And then again, they eventually hear the spoken word. And now, once they've got a word, we just take a couple and pass the rest around, and give Brittany back her cards when you're done. So so then they work on the beginning and the ending to words. So why is this important to you? You're way past 3. It's important to you because, have anybody here ever played the I Spy game? Yeah? Okay. So you want to think of the I Spy game in terms of the initial sound rather than how the word is spelled. So cat is a K, is a K sound. And church, even though it starts with a C, is not the word you want to use. Does that make sense? Okay. Because when you're playing with phonemic awareness, it has nothing to do with what's written. It's all in the ear. All right. Okay, so so once they start hearing the phonemes, then you can link those sounds to to letters or letter combinations. So ch is a classic letter combination, and in Rocket Phonics, we take the C and the H and we put a line underneath it so that they know those 2 letters make one sound. Liam, by the way, is in that area. And I'm told by a first grade teacher that is advanced, that they don't normally teach that kind of thing until kindergarten or first grade. I don't know. But we have a blending board in one of the rooms, so clearly Elizabeth decided to push them and see how far they could go. All right, so if you if they don't recognize the word when they're blending, then you can take the word apart. So, do you have anybody have a G? So, imagine that this is on the table, not on my chest, and you say to him, I'm looking for a word, and the word is peg. Can you find peg? And you just say, okay, so they're not going to be able to find peg when you first ask, so you just say, well, okay, can you find the p? And they'll find the p, and then they'll find the and then they'll find the g. And you go, great, that's peg. So for some of them, pulling the sounds they work better backwards than blending. There's the fancy word for blending, and there's a fancy word for for working backwards. If you care, it's called segmentation. You break the sounds apart. So, okay. So that begins to identify. They begin to sound out letters, and then they can identify the word. And then this is for Elizabeth, who asked me exactly when can they pronounce the sounds. So this comes from McLeod and Crow. Notice they don't talk about vowel acquisition, just consonant acquisition. And these are your 3-year-olds, your 4-year-olds, and your 5-year-olds. How many know a 5-year-old that cannot enunciate R? Anybody? Yeah. So while this may be the mean, 66% of the population, it's certainly not everyone. And it's not necessary for reading. So when you're using your brain, which is all the time, whether you like it or not, you have input, you have process, and then you have output. Consonant pronunciation is output. Reading is process. So the child may say wat, but in his mind he's saying rat. And the way to find out is to check. And so, thanks to Brittany, we now have these what we call certificates. They should be bringing them home to you. So if you're not getting certificates, your kid's probably too much like me for your own good. Any rate, so if he says wat, but he draws a line to the rat, then you know that he understands it. And a lot of us read silently, so it's not that big a deal. But this is just a test for comprehension along with everything else. And by the way, I left these things hollow so that they could practice their letters. Probably not a good idea to tell your parents that a doctor is helping them learn to write, because we're not known for good handwriting. But if you would help them, they'd probably get better. I taught my daughter everything I know, and her handwriting's atrocious.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Do they ever get confused with the A?
They don't seem to. And the A that we would prefer is what Pamela calls a stick and a ball. Oh, I forgot to repeat the question, didn't I? All right, so the question was, do they ever get confused with the A? So let's go back here. This A should be a stick and a ball. That is, we would prefer to use Futura script or font because, why? Because handwriting without tears uses Futura. And handwriting without tears is the easiest way to go from printing to cursive. So,
But
but
they don't do cursive in school anymore.
I know, but that because they're doing stupid in school does not mean we should set the kid up to be stupid. I tutor these kids in high school algebra, and they can't take notes because they don't print fast enough. So they're stuck. You know, that seems to me to be setting them up for failure.
So question.
Yeah?
If we're teaching them to write their name,
Yes.
and I'm doing the stick and ball,
Yes, that's perfect. They
but
do?
then you come along and you're teaching them that, and
Yes.
you're going to question me which A is A.
And-
What do we do?
Have they ever questioned you about that?
No.
No. Yeah, I don't know why. I also don't understand why people with accents understand when they read a word that has no accent to it. You know, like the dictionary says you pronounce head, head. However, down this way, you tend to pronounce it haid. And I talked to a Southern lady who said haid, and when I asked her about that, because she was buying a Rocket Phonics kit, you know, not just the preschool thing, but the whole thing. She said, well, of course we know how to say head. What do you want to do? Create a whole version called Rocket Phon Hicks? I was like, okay. So it seems to work. And we've also sold it to Australians and to Brits. So somehow they make that change. And I cannot tell you how they do it. The reason I'd like Futura is more for handwriting than for reading. Great questions. Keep asking. All right. So what we're looking at is a spiral staircase, right? You start out listening, understanding, and talking. And that gives you spoken vocabulary. So then you go from understanding and talking to word first and last sounds. And then you get new words. And you get the meaning and use basically from the people who are using them. And then you go from that to word parts. And that's where nursery rhymes come in. Songs are very helpful. Reading is a right brain where the visual part sits. Left brain where the sounds are. Phenomena. So is music. So if you use songs, you just encourage growth between a connection between the right and left brain that is going to be used later on for reading. And then phonemes, right? So you're moving from a giant word that's as long as a paragraph to word parts and words themselves to the sounds within the words. And then you go to linking those sounds to letters, blending the sounds, and sounding out. So the nuns tried to teach me to sound out my words so that I would know what the words were, but of course I didn't hear the sounds, and I thought the nuns were crazy, and so I just memorized words. That's how I learned to read, by brutal rote memorization. But my wife reads 4 times faster than me. So phonics is the way to go. Can you read without phonics? Yes, the Chinese do that. The Japanese do that. But phonics is faster and much more flexible. The Chinese character system has only 10,000 words. The English language has 800,000. So much more flexible. And it just keeps spiraling, right? You go into, when I went into medical school and I was in anatomy class, I learned a whole bunch of new words. How did I figure out how to pronounce them? Phonics. Okay. So here are the benchmarks. The standards for emergent reading in section F So these are the 5 standards, and the benchmarks will come later. So, shows motivation for and appreciation of reading. This comes from anybody that'll read to them. And, my daughter, of course, she was high verbal. So, if you were showing her the book and reading it to her, she was happy as a clam. And then when it became time for her to learn to read, she didn't want to. So that's why I invented the games, because I wasn't going to fight with my daughter. And then, so they expect the preschools to teach phonological awareness. Notice they don't expect them to teach phonic, just the word parts. Why do we go past the word parts to phonemes? Anybody? This tells me I'm talking over your head. To sound out a word, you have to know what the sound of that letter is. That's a phoneme. It's really that simple. And and then they shows alphabet and print knowledge and demonstrates comprehension of the books read aloud. So boys have a tendency to focus on action, and girls have a tendency to focus on relationship. So if you read the same story to a little boy and a little girl, the boy will will basically retell the story often from action to action to action. And the most important action becomes the first thing he tells you. So even if it's at the end, but it was this giant explosion, he might start with the giant explosion. It's just the way we're designed. So, but if you get them talking about what they did over the weekend, and they actually want to talk about that, or what their favorite character is. My nephews showed up last week for spring break, and they're 4 and 6, I think, or 7. And the 4-year-old was all about Paw Patrol. And so that was great. You know, he could tell you a story about Paw Patrol, and you know that he was demonstrating comprehension of books read aloud, mostly by my sister, his grandmother. So that's all that's expected, and emergent writing, which simply means that I could pass their emergent writing test with my handwriting. So really, it's a pretty low bar, and those are your benchmarks. And so this is what we call a certificate, and it meets the Onset Rime part of the standards. And in this particular certificate, I make it easy for them to find what the word means. And notice I say down here, soon I will read it. I made this word in preschool today, soon I will read it. And so I can, if I'm interested in seeing if they comprehend it, I can pull out Brittany's certificates and use those. And gradually I'm going to move towards it, because when I initially started, I had to rewrite Rocket Phonics in 2020 because they closed down all the schools. So in the preschools, I didn't know what the kids would know and not know. But the kids are a lot smarter than the standards. So thanks to Brittany's skill with computers and stuff, I'm going to try and fade these out. Have to talk to my board first. Oh, by the way, Tammy, Pamela is the president of the board. Yeah. So, and I think she agrees we should randomize the words. So, okay. So we have, it says here, connect stories to real life experiences. Your children at this age learn through movement and touch. And so some of them don't get the letters. And so my wife did a video called Be the Sound, where they are the letter. So if I stand this way, my back is here. So this is the letter K. For those of you who can't see, my leg is extended forward. And K is the kangaroo. So I'm a kicking kangaroo. Ka, 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 ka. And so as they play with being the letter, they also play with the sound. Okay. So when they don't get it, I go back, watch my wife do it, and reproduce it. I still got this boring doctor thing going down, and 50 years a doctor, I'm not going to get past it anytime soon. But at any rate, Be the Sound is very helpful, and soon we will have a way to get you to Be the Sound without having you to Google it on YouTube. I was just talking to the guy that's making the website better today, and we're working on that. All right. So, and asks the meaning of written text. So, does anybody know what a tat is?
I'm teasing.
What?
I'm teasing. I said it's a hyphen for a tattoo.
Ah.
Tat.
No, it's this thing here.
Like a tattoo.
So why do I put a word that there that the kids don't know? I give them an extra sticker for learning a new word. They will read for stickers, and that's great. And then they don't normally know that either, so then they get 2 stickers. And some of them are kind of greedy and take a whole bunch of stickers, but that's yeah. I had one that put stickers all over her face. She looked like she had measles. I was like, okay.
So I have a question about the certificates. Do you read the word and have them point to it? Or?
No. Do I? No, I have them sound out the word, and then with the cards. Okay? And then what I'm trying to do with the certificate is find out if they will transfer what they know about the cards to the letters on the page. Some kid, one kid just looked at the letter and said, well, those letters are really small. Right? And, compared to this, yes, they're really small. I don't know what the size of that P is, but it's probably a font size in the 40s or higher. So I'm trying to get them to transfer from the cards to a piece of paper. And then, if they do that, and they do that successfully, and they seem to have no problem, I will push them into the Rocket Phonics book. Eloise, the girl that was reading that you couldn't hear, she was reading out of the Rocket Phonics book before she went into kindergarten. And why do I like the Rocket Phonics book? Because every word in the Rocket Phonics book is phonetic. And I don't change the spelling. So the child can sound out every word and go as far as they want to go. I've had a preschooler reading at 2nd grade level. So, I don't want to limit them in any way. Good. All right, yeah, and demonstrates appreciation for printed materials. I have never seen a little one that didn't demonstrate appreciation for reading materials. I know as they get older and they fail to learn to read, and they fail to learn to read, they get angry and bitter about reading, and then it's hard. But at 4 years old, they've never failed. So they think they can do anything. All right, so phonological awareness is standard 2, and these are the 5 ways they have for learning phonological awareness. All right, so distinguishes individual words within spoken phrases. That has nothing to do with rocket phonics. That is all you guys talking to the kids. Combines words to make a compound word. So where do compound words fall in this? Think about the mindset of everything I've just said for the last half hour, the last 40 minutes being one word. So they transition from that to chunks of sounds being one word. But the idea that maybe those sounds could be broken apart and put back together again, that's an idea that you talk about with compound words. And you can do it any number of ways. I like silly, not just because I created a bunch of silly games, but because humor retains memory longer and better than anything else. And if you get them to enjoy words and reading and all this other stuff, then they'll have a tendency to do more of it. So, okay. So this is just combining 2 words to make a compound word and deleting one of the words from the compound word. So butterfly becomes butter. Okay. And then they do syllables into words and delete syllables from a word. That's a little harder. Not terribly useful, but they want it. Right, deleting syllables and adding syllables is just like, it's all about phonological awareness. So it's just like onset and rhyme. It's just syllables instead of single letters or a couple of letters, like the at family, the in family. Oh, by the way, I picked the families that I did because 95% of the time they're pronounced exactly the same way. So I guess there's 5% of the times where AT is not pronounced at. Who knew? So yeah, so compound words. I like this, flying butter, but that's the way my brain thinks. But this works too, and it's, the whole purpose is play. If they're not enjoying it, don't do it. It's just that simple. All right. So now, all of rocket phonics is based on recognizing letter sounds. So within the first couple of weeks, we have met that standard. Recognizes some letter has sounds. So I tell my volunteers, relax. No matter what you do, you will meet these standards. And so if they want to talk, that's one of the standards, getting them to talk. So let them talk. You don't really know what's going on with the child, and what they want to talk about is important. And then demonstrates comprehension of books, retells story with increasing accuracy. So my daughter seemed to watch the same video over and over and over again. Do you see the same problem well, I won't call it a problem, but do you have the same going on in your family? So do you ever ask them to tell you the story before you watch it? And how good are they? Okay. Well, if they're really good, then you've got the standard. And this is very helpful for comprehension, reading comprehension later on, because once they get immersed in reading, they start to recognize words that are that they've decoded, they've sounded out multiple times, and so that gives them fluency. And with fluency, they can read a story and remember the beginning of the paragraph by the time they get to the end, and they start developing in their mind a movie that gives them the comprehension they need. All right. So here's where I stopped. Intentionally uses scribbles to convey meaning, and the pharmacists have complained ever since. So yeah, sometimes I have to actually write their name on the certificate, and it does look better than what they've written, or I wouldn't do it. And then I send the certificates home. Have anybody here gotten a certificate home? Okay, good, great. The system is working. And that's it. Any questions?